like to start out first by making the crepes. So in a large bowl, add 4 large eggs at room temperature. Then you want to add 60 grams or 5 tablespoons of granulated white sugar. And just whisk that around so it's thoroughly smooth and combined. So now add your dry ingredients, so it's going to be 340 grams or 4 cups minus 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And as I was whisking, I quickly realized I forgot one of my ingredients. So you're going to need a total of 4 cups or 1 liter of whole milk that's at room temperature, but I like to add about 1/4 to 1/3 of the milk initially, just to get the mixture going. It's going to still be quite thick and pasty. But the idea here is you want to add that milk gradually in stages, so that way it prevents any clumps or lumps forming in your crepe batter. So just continue to gradually, in small additions, add your milk. Just whisk it till it's combined. And you see me here, I kind of lost patience. Once I was comfortable and I felt like I wouldn't get any more clumps in my crepe batter, I just poured all the remaining milk in, as well as a quick splash of vanilla for flavor, along with 1 to 3 tablespoons of brandy. It's up to you how much you want to add. And of course we need butter, so it's going to be 100 grams or 6 tablespoons of either unsalted or salted butter, doesn't really matter, as long as it's melted. And again, I can't emphasize enough that all your ingredients, your eggs, your milk, as well as your butter should be at room temperature. That way you don't have any clumps of butter that doesn't incorporate into your batter. So now a key step to making crepes is allowing it to rest for a couple hours, or you can even let it rest overnight. So as our crepe batter is chilling, I'm going to get started on the matcha pastry cream. So we need a total of 2.5 cups or 600 mils of either whole milk or 2% reduced fat milk. I'm going to add about half of it into a medium-sized saucepan and just place that over about medium to medium-high heat. And as the milk is getting hot and boiling, I'm going to get started on the rest of the ingredients. So we need 4 large eggs at room temperature, add half a cup plus 3 tablespoons or 145 grams of granulated white sugar. Just whisk it till it's smooth and combined. And then just add the remaining amount of milk that we did not add earlier into our saucepan, along with 4 tablespoons or 32 grams of cornstarch or corn flour as you might know it. And as I was whisking those ingredients together, I noticed my milk was coming to a very vigorous rolling boil. Just be careful, keep an eye on it, because milk can very easily boil over. And just slowly stream in your hot milk into your egg mixture. You want to stream it in slowly, that way you don't cook and scramble those eggs. This process is called tempering the eggs, if you ever heard of that before. That means you're slowly bringing up the temperature of those eggs, so that way it's a much easier way to incorporate the eggs into a hot mixture without scrambling and cooking those eggs. So speaking of cooking the eggs, we need to cook it gently over a very low fire or low heat. So go ahead and pour that mixture, that pastry cream mixture, back into the pot, and we're going to cook those eggs. I like to use either a rubber spatula like you see there, or like a whisk is even better, because a whisk helps to remove any clumps. And as you bring it to a very slow simmer or boil, I don't want to say boil, it just kind of heats up. And as it's heating up, you'll notice that the texture starts to get thicker and thicker, so that cornstarch is becoming activated. So once you have a very thick pastry cream, which kind of looks like a pudding basically, you want to add your flavoring. So it's going to be vanilla, so about 1 teaspoon or so of vanilla, a couple tablespoons of butter, never hurts. And then I'm adding some matcha powder. So I use a total of 14 grams of a fine milled matcha powder. That's basically all I had left in the bag, so that's why I use 14 grams, but you can definitely use more or less, is up to you. But I found that it gave a nice potency, like a nice amount of matcha flavor and color, of course. And I do recommend that even though I'm stirring it in like you see me doing here with the spatula, it still gets kind of clumpy even after straining the matcha powder. So I do really recommend, if you have the time, if you have the tools, just blend it up using a stick blender or some sort of blender, food processor kind of product, and it'll get it nice and smooth, just like you see there. So our pastry cream is still very hot and it's very like soft and kind of liquidy at this point. So You want to cover it, just make sure to touch the surface with some plastic wrap and refrigerate it. So as the matcha pastry cream is chilling in the fridge, magically 2 hours have passed and our crepe batter is ready to be cooked. You can see here as I'm stirring it and ladling it, it's just ever so slightly thicker but still very smooth and creamy. So now I'm just taking a very large wide bottom skillet that's non-stick, just make sure it's non-stick most importantly. Mine's about 12 inches in size, so I added anywhere between 1/3 of a cup to 1/2 a cup of batter. Just do make sure, try to err on the side of less batter, that way your crepes are nice and very thin and tender. And just let it cook over about medium heat until it's just dry on top, and if you take a quick peek underneath, it should be like lightly golden brown with a lacy appearance. That's when you know it's ready to flip your crepe. So just take 2 bare hands, in my opinion that's the best way, but do be careful because you know, you don't want to burn yourself, just be very swift about it. And just cook it for an extra few seconds underneath until, same idea, just it should be lightly golden brown on the underside as well. And then just go ahead and remove it from your pan. And for this amount of batter, if you're using the same size skillet, which is again about 12 inches in diameter, it should give you roughly 16 large crepes. So once your crepes are all cooked through and they're cooling off, we're going to move along and take some heavy whipping cream, place it into a large bowl that I chilled in my freezer for a few minutes. That way the colder your cream is, the faster whip up, and also incorporate more volume into your whipped cream. So after a few minutes of whipping on medium to medium high speed, I added some powdered sugar just to sweeten up your cream, and that's to taste. You can hardly see it there because it matches the color of the cream. And then after that's done, you want to take your matcha pastry cream, which you can see how much firmer and thicker it is after a night sitting in your fridge. So I did whip it up just to help soften it, and that way it's a lot easier to incorporate that whipped cream. I incorporated about 1.5 cups or so of the whipped cream into my matcha pastry cream to make a creme patissier. So now that you made your creme patissier or diplomat cream, you can see it's quite soft here, so I do recommend that you refrigerate it for at least 6 hours. You can definitely make the pastry cream along with the whipped cream a couple days in advance, that way you're not overwhelmed on the day that you have to assemble and serve your cake. So with that being said, for the remaining whipped cream, I'm just taking like 1/2 teaspoon or so of matcha powder just to flavor it before we assemble our cake the next day. So now the next day has arrived and we're finally ready to assemble our cake. It feels like an eternity, but I promise you it actually helps to break up the steps so that way you're not, again, overwhelmed to do everything on the day that you make your crepes and your pastry cream and all that. So I'm just taking my stack of crepes. Again, it's 16 crepes, which I refrigerated overnight. So at this point, it's quite firm and crispy around the edges. So I just took an 8-inch cake round, which I'm going to serve my cake on. And that way I use it as a guide to cut out my crepes into evenly sized 8-inch rounds. And it's an optional step. A lot of people don't actually do this. They like that nice rustic look of the rough edges around the crepe, and they just basically stack the crepes along with the cream to make your cake. But you'll see why later, why I like to have a nice clean edge to my cake. And I do recommend that you not cut on a stainless steel cookie sheet because it does actually dull the tip of your knife. So now that you have 16 evenly shaped, uniform in size crepe pieces, you're finally ready to assemble this thing and put it in your mouth. So it's actually next day for me here. So I just took my crepe, put it on the cake board, added a smear of that cream underneath the cake board, that way it doesn't slip side around on the turntable. And I found that was the same problem with the crepe, so I just added a dab or a smear of that cream underneath as I was spreading over the cream, that way the crepe itself doesn't slip side around. And this is pretty self-explanatory. Just add, like, you know, maybe somewhere between 1/3 of a cup to 1/2 a cup of the filling. Not too much because you don't want to overfill it, and that way, you know, it just kind of spills out the side and it's really messy. So just add a thin layer of cream in between each crepe. So as you're assembling your cake and you're spreading over that filling, do kind of look at it from different angles and make sure that it's sitting up straight, because I do find that the cream does soften up as you're working with it. So now at this point I'm just adding my last layer of crepe, finally. 16 tall layers. So what I did here, and I forgot to film it and I did it off camera, was just frost my entire cake in that remaining whipped cream that we reserved earlier. And do take your time with this. The OCD or perfectionist in me came out, and so I made sure that I had nice clean edges, as clean as possible, because we're going to be pouring a mirror glaze on top, and so if you have any lumps on the surface of your cake, it will actually highlight that. So I like to have a nice, sleek, elegant, clean edge to my cakes, especially with the mirror glaze. So now for that mirror glaze, I just took some agave nectar, or you could use honey or glucose syrup or corn syrup. Just add it into a medium-sized saucepan along with some water, and just heat that up over about medium-high heat until it comes to a rolling boil. Now in the meantime, I'm just taking that remaining water and just adding 1 package of a plain powdered gelatin. And you're just looking to rehydrate that gelatin here. So now at this point, the glucose syrup, agave nectar, honey, whatever you're using, and that water mixture has come to a boil. And you want to shut the heat off immediately and then add your condensed milk. So along with the condensed milk, you want to add your gelatin mixture straight in. You want to make sure that you're not boiling the gelatin here, because otherwise it won't set up properly. You just want that liquid hot or warm enough just so it dissolves the little particles of the gelatin. And then just stir it in to dissolve and combine until you have a nice creamy, milky liquid on your hands. And then just pour it straight into a pitcher filled with some white chocolate. I like to use a pitcher because it has a spout on it and it makes it a lot easier to pour over our glaze later. So now that the liquid is added, I just added some matcha powder. So I use 2 teaspoons. You can use more or less depending on how matcha-y you like it and how much of a green, brilliant, vibrant green color you want. And matcha, you do have to kind of blend it with a stick blender, which I did off camera. That way you have a nice smooth glaze on your hands. So now I'm just going to pour it over my cake, which has been really thoroughly chilled in the fridge, or you can even freeze your cake to make sure that it holds its shape as you're pouring your glaze over. You can see that nice reflection now. So at this point, my glaze was still pretty liquidy, and I felt that it actually was too liquidy, and it just gave me this really sheer mirror glaze, which I wasn't really going after. I was going after something that's more opaque in color. And so I recommend that you actually let your glaze set either on your countertop if it's cool enough in your kitchen, or in the fridge, just until it's a little bit thicker and it was still pourable. And that way you get a nice layer, a nice opaque glaze. And of course you can decorate it with some strawberries or fresh fruit, a nice pop of color on that matcha green tea colored cake. So you can see as I slice into that cake, all those beautiful layers, all 16 of those crepes that are nice and sweet and tender, sandwiched in between a light and creamy green tea flavored cream, and of course enrobed in that beautiful, shiny, glassy, and mirror-like glaze. It's so beautiful. So definitely make this for your friends and family to impress them. It's actually not that hard and not that complicated if you break down the steps over a few days. And let me know in the comments below what you think, as well as any video suggestions for the future. I'd love to know. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, notification bell to get notified of new videos every week. And of course, smash that like button. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye.